Kuwan White, the man prosecutors in Texas say pulled the trigger on Mo3, just posted on Instagram from behind bars, said everybody. He stayed loyal to has walked away, asked his daughter, his family, and the one woman he loves to forgive him for what he's about to do. That post got screenshotted, went viral, and the internet instantly started putting pieces together. The man accused of catching a body for Yella Beezy is sitting in federal prison on a 9-year gun sentence, now facing a capital murder charge. A charge in Texas that can bring the death penalty and the people he allegedly did it for nowhere in sight. So now he's talking. Kuwan White is snitching on Yella Beezy, and Yella Beezy is set to go to trial on February 2nd, 2026. Y'all need to hear every detail because this isn't just rap drama. This is a life on the line. A legacy cut short and a case that could end with someone on death row. In Texas, let me walk you through it from the very start, because to really understand how serious that Instagram post is, you need the full backstory. Let's go back to Oak Cliff, Dallas, Texas, mid-2000s. Two young black men from the same neighborhood, both hungry, both talented, both chasing the same lane. On one side, you've got Marquise DeAndre Conway, known to the world as Yella Beezy. On the other, Melvin Noble, known in the streets as Mo3. Now here's what people outside Dallas don't always get. Oak Cliff isn't just a place, it's an identity. When you rep Oak Cliff, you're repping a certain pride, a certain struggle, a certain code tied to that zip code. So when two artists from that same area start rising at the same time, going for the same spotlight, friction is almost guaranteed. That's just how it goes. The tension between them reportedly goes all the way back to the early 2000s. Some say it was pure big competition. Two rising stars in one market. Others say it started over a woman. You already know how that plays out, but publicly, both of them kept it cool. Yella Beezy went on Vlad TV in 2019 and said straight up, I don't know him. When asked about Mo3 sat down with Vlad that same year in April and said there was no issue, no rap beef, no problems on the surface. It looked professional, like two artists staying in their lane. Behind the scenes, the streets knew it wasn't that simple. The lyrics told a different story. The subliminals on Instagram told a different story. People paying attention could feel the tension building, and then things started getting real. This is the part a lot of people outside Dallas missed. In 2017, a Dallas comedian named Roy Lee Pate, known as Roy Lee, started publicly going at Yella Beezy. His angle? Questioning whether B was really from Oak Cliff, saying he was claiming something he didn't fully live. Now online, that might sound like petty drama, but in the streets, questioning someone's hood is serious. That's major disrespect. That situation went on for about a year. Then October 2018 hit and everything shifted. Roy Pate was shot in North Dallas. He was hit in the leg, but a blood clot formed 2 weeks later. On October 13th, 2018, Roy Pate died. And here's what made everything even crazier. The very next day, October 14th, Yella Beezy was shot 8 times while driving on the Sam Rayburn Tollway in Louisville, Texas. 8 times. He survived, hospitalized briefly, then released. But 8 shots, and the timing? The day after Roy dies, the streets went wild, connecting dots. Mo3 was close to Roy Lee. And when Roy passed, Mo3 didn't stay silent. He dropped a diss track as light on him, where he appeared to call out his rivals and hint that retaliation was on the table. Later, he dropped a 219, a direct shot at Yella Beezy on Roy's birthday. That track referenced the Tollway shooting. It put everything out there at that point. This wasn't just music anymore. This was personal. This was pain. This was real. Still publicly, both sides kept saying it was nothing yellow. B even posted hospital footage and videos online, not looking scared, showing he survived. Meanwhile, Mo3 kept releasing music. The Dallas scene kept moving, but the tension, it kept building quietly. Then February 2020, Yella Beezy allegedly got into a physical altercation with Mo3's manager Brandon Rainwater at a club. Mo3 went online and called it out, said your people jumped my people. At that point, the idea of we're good, it was done, completely gone. The situation active whether they admitted it publicly or not. Now look at where both artists were by 2020. Mo3 was rising fast. His 2018 hit Everybody had already put him on the map. In 2019, he dropped a Badaz Mo3 with Boosie Badaz, which charted on the Billboard 200. His track A Broken Love with Kevin Gates was heading toward double platinum. Mo3 wasn't local anymore. He was going national. He had over 800 Instagram followers. He was moving in Yella Beezy. He was already there. That's on Me hit the Billboard Hot 100 in 2017. He had records with 2 Chainz, T.I., Gucci Mane, Quavo. Chris Brown signed to Hitco under L.A. Reid. He was established. 2 artists from the same area. Dangerous mix, a powder keg waiting to go off, and according to prosecutors, somebody decided to act around noon on November 11th. 2020 Veterans Day. Mo3 was driving north on Interstate 35E in Dallas near the Dallas Zoo around Clarendon Drive and Illinois Avenue. A black Chevrolet Camaro pulled up next to him. Both vehicles came to a stop on the highway. The driver of the Camaro stepped out, ski mask on, rifle in hand. He approached Mo3's car. Mo3 saw what was happening. He got out and ran in broad daylight on a busy interstate. The gunman chased him. Shots rang out, multiple rounds. One hit Mo3 in the back of the head. Another driver on the highway was hit by a stray bullet but survived. Musher rushed to a hospital. He was 28 years old. He didn't make it. The shooting was caught on traffic cameras. Police call it brazen daytime public highway civilians. All around this wasn't quiet. This was bold planned. Exactly 1 month later, December 9th, 2020, Dallas police made an arrest. Kuwan Dontrell White, 22 years old, arrested based on matching descriptions, cell phone data, placing him at the scene, and witness statements. He was already out on bond at the time for firearm possession as a convicted felon and evading arrest. This wasn't new territory for him. He was charged with Mo3's murder in February 2021. He was indicted then in November 2022. He was sentenced to 105 months, 8 years, and 9 months in federal prison on a separate gun charge tied to the case. So he's been locked up. This whole time charged with murder, serving time waiting. Meanwhile, the internet had already drawn its own conclusions. Photos surfaced online showing Kuwan White around people connected to Yella Beezy. Circle tweets were saying it straight, calling him both Mo3's alleged killer and someone tied closely to someone tied closely. Yella Beezy people were saying this back in 2020, but the legal system takes time, and for nearly 4 years after Mo3's death, Yella Beezy stayed free. Drop music released as Yella Boy in 2020-22, featured with Lil Wayne in 2020-24. Life kept moving to some. It looked like he might walk away untouched. But behind the scenes, investigators were building. Dallas police and federal agents were both working the case. This wasn't just local. The feds were involved. And when the feds step in, they move carefully. They don't act until they're ready. Then March 2025 hit. Over 5 years after a worse death, a Dallas County grand jury indicted Yella Beezy, real name Marquis DeAndre Conway, for capital murder. While remuneration, that phrase matters, it means murder for hire. And in Texas, that can mean the death penalty. On March 20th, 2025, he was arrested and booked into Dallas County Jail. Bond was set at $2 million high because the charge was serious and prosecutors believed he could be a flight risk. Now, look at the evidence being presented. Surveillance footage tying him to the case. A $40 zero cash withdrawal around the time of Mo3's death. $40,000 in cash around a suspected murder for hire. That raises questions. Add in cell phone data, witness statements, and co-defendants Kuwan White and another man, Devin Maurice Brown, who was indicted in April 2021 for allegedly helping coordinate the hit and contacting witnesses. 3 men tied into this, and the alleged shooter is already in federal custody. Think about that position. He's serving time, facing murder charges, looking at a potential death sentence that gives him every reason to cooperate. Then that Instagram post drops, the one that changed everything. An account linked to Kuwan White posted a message. The caption said he feels abandoned and hopes to be forgiven for what he's about to do. And in his own words, he wrote, "Everybody, I was loyal to done left. I just want my daughter, my family, and the one woman I love to forgive me for what I am about to do." Read that again. Forgive me for what I'm about to do. Some online tried to interpret it differently, but people closely watching the case, they saw it clearly. When you line that post up with everything happening legally, it points one way. Kuwan White is preparing to talk. He's not asking forgiveness for the past. He's asking for what comes next. He's saying he's been left alone, facing everything by himself, and now he's choosing to protect himself. That's as close as it gets to announcing cooperation without saying it outright, and Yella Beezy's legal team saw the pressure building too. Even before that post went viral, his attorneys filed motions asking prosecutors to reveal all confidential informants and cooperating witnesses ahead of trial. They asked for any deals being offered, any incentives, everything because they know someone is talking. Now understand what that means. Legally, Kuwan White is the alleged shooter. If he testifies, if he tells the court what happened, who hired him, how it went down, that's direct evidence, not speculation, not circumstantial, direct testimony from someone inside the alleged plot. And prosecutors already have supporting evidence: the cash withdrawal, phone records, surveillance, a second co-defendant. They're building this from every angle, but a cooperating witness from inside. That's the strongest piece. That's what can turn a case into a conviction. Now look at Yella Beezy's current situation. He bonded out on March 28, 2025. after bond was reduced to $750 zero, but the restrictions are tight: house arrest, ankle monitor, no weapons, no contact with witnesses or co-defendants. Can't leave Dallas without permission. He even had to request court approval just to go to the studio, limited to 1 day a week, 5 hours max in August 2025. His lawyer, John F. Guscio III, tried to loosen those restrictions, saying his career was being affected. The court denied it. The judge wasn't moved. And during that bond hearing, she made a statement that matters. She said, "It's pretty egregious to watch that video, but the snitching as you can get without sitting in front of a prosecutor and saying it word for word in Yella Beezy's legal team. They already saw the writing on the wall even before that post blew up. His attorneys filed motions demanding prosecutors reveal the identities of all confidential informants and cooperating witnesses at least 20 days before trial. They asked about any deals, any incentives, everything on the table. Why? Because they know somebody's talking. They can feel the pressure building." Now let me break down what it actually means when a co-defendant decides to cooperate, because this part is critical. Kuwan White is the alleged trigger man. If his version of events is what prosecutors need to lock in that murder-for-hire charge against Yella Beezy, his testimony could be the most damaging piece of evidence in this entire case. We're talking about someone who was there, who allegedly pulled the trigger, who allegedly got paid, getting on the stand and explaining who hired him, what was said when it happened, and how the money moved. That's not circumstantial, that's direct eyewitness testimony tied to the conspiracy. And here's where it gets even heavier. Prosecutors already have pieces in place. They've got the $40 zero cash withdrawal, they've got cell phone record surveillance footage, and they've got Devin Maurice Brown as a second co-defendant allegedly involved in coordinating the hit. The state is building this case from multiple angles, but a cooperating insider, that's the crown jewel. That's what turns a strong case into a near slam dunk. Now look at where Yella Beezy stands today. He bonded out on March 28, 2025, after a judge lowered his bond from $2 million to $750 zero, but the restrictions are tight. He's on house arrest with an ankle monitor, no weapons, no contact with witnesses, victims, or co-defendants. He can't leave Dallas without court approval. The judge gave him limited work, release 1 day a week, 5 hours max, just to go to a recording studio. He literally had to ask the court for permission just to make music. In August 2025, his attorney, John F. Guscio III, tried to ease those conditions, arguing his career was taking a hit. The court shut it down. The judge wasn't budging, and during that original bond hearing, she said something that matters. She stated, "It's pretty egregious to watch that video." But the court also considered the evidence or lack of evidence the state presented. In other words, the footage is disturbing, but procedurally the case wasn't fully locked in yet. That doesn't mean it's weak. It just means it wasn't airtight at that stage. By late 2025, the defense was fighting on another front. Prosecutors dropped 16 terabytes of evidence. Let that sink in. 16 terabytes. The defense pushed back, saying a lot of it was repetitive, irrelevant long clips where nothing happens, jail calls not tied to buy files labeled in confusing ways. Their argument: "You're burying us in noise to hide the signal," and that tells you how aggressively the prosecution is building this case. A pre-trial hearing was set for January 9th, 2026. B was supposed to appear in court on January 16th, but he missed it due to his mother's passing. The trial date stayed locked. February 2nd, 2026, and if convicted, he could face the death penalty. Texas doesn't play with that. That's not a threat, it's a reality. Meanwhile, Devin Maurice Brown, the third man charged, has his own trial set for November 2026. His situation could directly impact B's defense. Prosecutors say Brown helped organize the hit and even reached out to witnesses to influence their statements. If Brown flips, or if those witnesses now feel free to speak, that's another layer of pressure on the alleged mastermind. Now here's the part that really hits. Kuwan White was allegedly loyal enough to pull that trigger to chase a man down a highway, fire shots in broad daylight, and disappear. Loyal enough to sit on a 9-year federal sentence without saying a word for years. Loyal enough to face a capital murder charge while others stayed free. And according to that Instagram post, everyone he stood solid for is gone, left him alone now. Compare that to Yella Beezy's side after his March 2025 arrest. He dropped a new single in September called "Blame It On Me." He was still creating, still moving, still fighting the case through legal channels, his team filing motions challenging evidence, pushing back, operating like there's still a way out. But here's the reality: nobody escapes if the alleged shooter, who's also facing death, decides that loyalty wasn't mutual and it's time to speak. No legal strategy can fully shield against that, because juries listen to first-hand accounts, and that kind of testimony hits different. The streets had been calling this for years back in 2019 when Bay said on VAD TV he didn't know Mo3. People questioned it in 2024 when he was asked why he never acknowledged Mo3's death and said, what was the point of people noticed then in 2025 when he got arrested? And the same Kuwan White the internet had been linking to him since 2020 turned out to be the alleged shooter. That just confirmed what many already believed. Now pause for a second and remember Melvin Noble Mo3, because in all this courtroom talk it's easy to lose sight of the fact that a man lost his life. A 28-year-old artist from Dallas, making some of the most raw and real music out of Texas, over 800,000 followers on track to become one of the biggest names in the South. Even after his death, his music kept going. Projects like Shot Has 4 Eva and Legend kept charting outside Better Days. With Og Bobby, billions connected with people worldwide. A Broken Love with Kevin Gates went double platinum. That's legacy. That's impact that doesn't stop earlier. This year, his estate even won a major case in Sherman, Texas. An engineer claimed ownership of nearly 130 of his tracks. The jury sided with him. His family ruled the music belonged to him and ordered the files returned along with damages, even in death. His people are fighting for what he built. Mo3 was 28. He had a daughter, a future. And if the allegations are true that life was taken on a Dallas highway over a situation that started years earlier and spiraled out of control, zoom out for a second. This story isn't just about two rappers. It's about what happens when street issues bleed into the industry. And nobody stops it in time. Both artists had major deals, major cosigns. Gucci Mane, 2 Chainz, Boosie, Kevin Gates, Lil Wayne. They were crossing over nationally, but the same tension that may have started over a woman, a neighborhood, or a comedian's words allegedly followed them all the way to it. Murder for hire case. How many times do we see this pattern? And there's another layer here. The justice system, especially in Texas, has a long history when it comes to capital punishment. When we talk about someone facing the death penalty, that's not just legal. It's final. That's a life-ending decision that reality matters no matter what side you're on. Clear as this, Kuwan White allegedly took a life and ended up alone. Mo3 is gone and his daughter grows up without him. Yella Beezy is on house arrest, facing a capital charge. Devin Brown is sitting in jail, multiple lives destroyed, and one already lost before any verdict. That's the real cost of this. So let's bring it full circle. Kuwan White post from behind bars says everyone left him, asks for forgiveness for what he's about to do. The defense is already asking about informants. The prosecution has massive evidence, cash trails, phone data, surveillance, co-defendants, trial date February 2nd, 2026. Possible outcome: death penalty. This isn't a weak case. This isn't a gamble on a technicality. This is a capital murder trial in Texas. And the alleged shooter, the man at the center of it all, just signed off Instagram and asked his daughter to forgive him. That says everything. Not because people want to be over, but because when the alleged shooter talks, the case changes. That's how these cases work. That's how the system works. Loyalty that only runs one way. It always ends like this. Mo3 ran on that highway trying to survive. He didn't make it. And now in 2026, the people allegedly tied to that moment are watching everything close in around them one by one. And the man who was allegedly left holding it all? He just made it clear he's done holding it alone. Drop your thoughts below. You think Kuwan White testifies? You think Yella Beezy beats this, or is the case already too deep? This trial is about to be one of the biggest in hip-hop, and we're covering every move. Rest in peace, Mo3.